on guard for them.
Que l'on ouvre les portes. Let the doors be open. Statements by members. The Honourable Member for Mississauga Lakeshore.
Mr. Speaker, I rise with a heavy heart to pay tribute to a very special community leader and friend. We lost Moby Bukhari late last year. Moby served as manager of Erincourt Co-op, but to everyone who knew him, he was so much more than this title suggested. Moby saw his daily work and sphere of influence as part of a deeper calling, and he embodied the very best of what it means to be a public servant. He was a trusted mentor to an entire generation of young people at Erincourt, for whom he built a gym, installed basketball nets, and created a breakfast program. Generous with his time, he also offered a great deal of one-on-one support. Moby was a relentless champion of inclusion and unequivocal in his quest to give every person he could reach the chance for a brighter future. To his wife Mishti and daughter Zelia, we pledge to honor Moby's life and legacy by continuing to work together to ensure his dream of a better tomorrow for everyone lives on. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Chicoutimi.
The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Lafière. The Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean region is getting ready for public hearings about the Energy Saguenay project. The I Believe in My Region campaign was launched to show that Saguenay is open for business and ready for development. Recently, through Mr. Yvon Laprise's initiative, over 37,000 members have joined the Pro-LNG Quebec and Saguenay group on Facebook. Richard Courchaine from the local radio station in Saguenay has encouraged listeners to show their support for LNG Quebec and to demonstrate that support publicly. I'm told that something is being organized. I've often heard lately that we have the greenest aluminum in the world, and I dare to hope that we can offer the greatest LNG on the planet. In Canada, our projects are well executed, they're ethical, and they are responsible. If environmental bodies greenlight a project, we must seize the opportunity. I encourage the region to keep showing support for major projects for its future. The Honourable Member for Bourassa. Mr. Speaker, as a parliamentarian, we have many privileges, and today I'm going to use one of those prerogatives to announce great news to this House. Exactly 1 month ago, January 26th, my daughter-in-law, Anne-Marie, and her spouse, Edwin Simon, brought a beautiful little girl into the world, and her name is Nellie.
Avoir les yeux de Nelly.
Seeing Nellie's eyes has led me to believe that there's no doubt that our future is bright. Being a grandfather for the first time is an immense joy. And 2020 is the start of a new generation for the DeBoer family. Dear colleagues, please join me in wishing not only congratulations to Anne-Marie and Edwin, but to wish the warmest of welcomes to my granddaughter, Nellie Dubourg.
L'honorable député de Rimouski.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Neja-Témiscouata-Les-Basques. Mr. Speaker, the countdown is on for the city of Rimouski, which is going to host the 2022 Quebec Game Finals in less than 888 days. From July 29th to August 6th in 2022, more than 3,000 athletes throughout Quebec are going to converge on my riding. They will compete for the greatest honors of Quebec sport, which includes all disciplines. I'd like to highlight the tireless work of the organizing committee, volunteers, and people who acted to get to host these games. That's not only an opportunity for Quebec's athletes, but a source of pride for all of these young participants. During the 9 days of competitions, everyone will be able to see the professionalism and the dedication of the organizing committee and the warm welcome that is renowned in our region. I personally invite all members of the House to come and experience these unforgettable moments with me and to celebrate excellence in sport.
Member for Fleetwood Port Kells.
I rise today on behalf of the member from Delta to pay tribute to Brandon Bassey. Brandon was an aspiring young athlete who was taken from this world far too soon. At the age of 19, he just started his undergraduate arts degree at Simon Fraser University, was a member of the university men's soccer team, and a Vancouver Whitecaps prospect. Unfortunately, a tragic car crash on May 18, 2019, extinguished these dreams. Brandon was an outstanding athlete, a generous, compassionate person, a positive role model for many young students in Delta. Our thoughts are with Brandon's family, his mom Pam, his dad Colwinder, brother Derek, and sister Dalbeer. In his memory, the Bassey family created the Brandon Bassey Foundation. $1,000 will be awarded annually to a student in North Delta who demonstrates leadership inside and outside the classroom. Even though Brandon is no longer with us, this fine young man's legacy will live on through this scholarship, which will help other students realize their dreams.
Member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, last night it was a great honor for me to attend a reception hosted by the Leader of the Official Opposition celebrating Black History Month and the achievements of Canada's Black community at his home. As far as we know, this is the first time that a Black History Month reception has been hosted at Stornoway by any leader of any party. Various members of Parliament and leaders from the Black community gathered along with our leader and his family to build relationships and discuss important issues. I want to particularly recognize Emmanuel and Mariama Bayo and the member for Tobique-Macnaquac for their leadership on this event, as well as the work done by staff, especially Jesus Mondo and Anton Sestritson. Black Canadians are an integral part of our Conservative family. Current and former staff, former candidates and nomination candidates like Abdul Abdi, Denise Seal, and Toyin Crandall, elected provincial Conservatives like Minister Casey Madu in Alberta, and soon-to-be elected provincial Conservatives like Patrick Mayangi and Ottawa Vanier. Mr. Speaker, we have more work to do to build and strengthen the relationship between the Black community and the Conservative Party. Last night was another big step forward.
The Honourable Member for Mississauga, Streetsville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As February comes to an end, we conclude Black History Month. I wanted to recognize Wilma Francis as a community leader and strong voice in my riding. Every Monday, she brings together Caribbean Canadian seniors across Mississauga with the Carry Can group, helping to keep seniors active. I also recently sat down with a very influential Bishop Walker from Praise Cathedral, which has the largest congregation in the GTA, and learned the history of lawyer Robert Sutherland. I'm proud of our government for putting Viola Desmond on the $10 bill and making her the very first woman in Canadian history to be featured on Canadian currency. Desmond's story of fighting against systemic discrimination and racism is a reminder to all Canadians of our collective responsibility against inequality. I want to encourage all Canadians to start conversations and learn the history of these remarkable Canadians that helped shape this peaceful country that we're in today. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Brome-Missisquoi. Mr. Speaker, it is with great pride that I'd like to highlight the performance of Maxi Plante, an athlete from Magog. Since the beginning of the year, she has stood on no less than 3 podiums in 3 competitions for extreme downhill skating, including a gold medal on February 15th during the Red Bull Ice Cross competition in Yokohama, Japan. As well as having distinguished herself during the last several months, this 27-year-old athlete is ranked 8th in the world. On the Red Bull circuit for 6 years, her discipline and tireless work have drawn quite a roadmap for her life, on top of her career as a pilot in the far north. We are very proud to have such a talented athlete in our riding, who put on her skates for the very first time in Magog's arena at the age of 5. Thank you, Maxi, for making our region sparkle with your athletic performance.
Swan River, Neepawa.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to stand in the House today to congratulate the community of Rivers, Manitoba, a vibrant community in my riding. Earlier this month, Rivers proudly hosted the Manitoba Scotties Tournament of Hearts. The 68th edition of this tournament resulted in Team Einerson winning the provincial championship, and as of Sunday, winning the national championship in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. Although we all knew Manitoba would once again prove that they are truly Canada's best curlers, the real champions are the community of Rivers. Today I rise to commend the efforts of the organizing committee, sponsors, and volunteers who dedicated their time and energy in ensuring a successful event that proudly showcased their love of the game and their community. Mr. Speaker, I congratulate the community of Rivers, Team Manitoba on a well-deserved victory. All of Canada is celebrating with you.
Here, here, here.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Laurent. 30 years ago, pogroms were committed against Armenians in Azerbaijan in the capital of Baku. For 7 days in January 1990, hundreds of Armenians were beaten, killed, and expelled from the city. These crimes against Armenians accelerated and nearly completed the ethnic cleansing of Armenians in the country. Nearly 500,000 Armenians were deported and sought refuge in different countries around the world, including Canada.
By the Sumgait pogroms in 1988, where Armenian civilians were targeted, being killed in their homes and in the streets.
The atrocities committed during this violence in Sumgait shocked the entire world. This anniversary leads us to reflect on the privilege we have to live in a country where diversity and inclusion are our force, and where various ethnic and religious communities can participate equally in the country's policies.
Armenian victims of these pogroms in Sumgait and Baku, we solemnly condemn all forms of racism, xenophobia, and hatred.
Bravo. The Honourable Member for Edmonton West.
Mr. Speaker, today I'm pleased to rise to say happy 100th birthday to World War II veteran and Edmontonian Mr. Leslie McLean. Like many of his era, he fought for Canada during the war. Enlisting in 1941, he served as a leading seaman on the HMCS Calgary, part of our proud Corvette Navy that fought in the Battle of the Atlantic. During his service, the Calgary shared in the sinking of one U-boat and single-handedly sank a second one. The Calgary participated in the Normandy landings later, protecting the landing craft of his friend Fred Russell, whose 100th birthday we celebrated in the House just last year. And the two are still friends to this very day. Mr. McLean later transferred to the HMCS Ontario and served in the Pacific Theatre. Discharged in 1946, he came home to Edmonton, where he and his wife Christina, who served in the Women's Army Corps, raised 7 children, 14 grandchildren, 25 grandchildren. Mr. McLean, happy 100th birthday, and from a grateful nation, thank you.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, February 26th is Pink Shirt Day. That's why I'm proud to wear some pink today. This important national day was launched in 2007 when a group of students decided to defend a young person who was being bullied for wearing pink. Since I have a background in education, I pay special attention to this cause. Nearly 1 young Canadian out of 4 is bullied as often as twice a week. A UNICEF report reveals that Canada is unfortunately 21st out of 29 developed countries when it comes to bullying. We have a great deal of work to do to improve the situation, Mr. Speaker. That is why it's essential to continue to act, to raise awareness, to prevent bullying. We have to create a safe environment for all of our children, and by so doing, support the development of our future decision makers, our youth, our future.
Honourable Member for London Fanshawe.
Bullying is never acceptable in our society, whether it's in our schools, workplaces, homes, online, or even in Parliament. Today is Pink Shirt Day, a day to raise awareness of the ongoing issue of bullying. Whether bullying takes the form of racism, including anti-Black, anti-Indigenous racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, gender-based violence, homophobia, transphobia, or even just wearing a pink shirt, we will stand together to fight it. We are seeing a dramatic rise in bullying and hate that is allowed to flourish on the internet. Social media platforms must take a responsibility for removing hateful and extremist content before it can do harm. As New Democrats, we recognize the inherent dignity of all people and about building a sense of community. Let us recommit to countering bullying and hate in our communities and in our country.
L'honorable député de Berthier.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Mr. Speaker, a business, Les Outils à Richard, or Richard's Tool Company, in Berthierville is celebrating the 130th anniversary of opening its doors. This business creates ergonomic and high-quality tools that is the pride of the region. However, it's currently experiencing significant difficulties because of the ongoing rail crisis. This business imports a great deal of its inputs and currently has a great deal of stock stuck in Vancouver in Alberta. The only options are to detour through Montreal with a 20-day delay or to pay a great deal more with another shipper. This situation is putting this business in significant difficulty because of the penalty clauses included in its contracts. Inaction and lack of leadership are putting our businesses in danger. The solutions proposed by the Bloc are simple. After 130 years of being in operation, the business Les Outils à Richard deserves a quick resolution to the crisis. It is time to act.
The Honourable Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Bullying impacts people across Canada every day. At school, on the playground, at the office. Cyberbullying and online hate have also enabled bullies to hurt Canadians even when they are in their own homes. We know the consequences of bullying are enormous. Every year, Canadians who are bullied face significant mental health challenges and may even become suicidal. It has to stop. Pink Shirt Day gives us an opportunity to make it known that we will not accept hurtful words or actions directed at anyone, especially children. Let's all work together to make sure that no one gets bullied for how they speak, what they wear, who they love, or where they're from, or for any reason. Today, we remember to stand up against bullies, lead by example, and treat all Canadians with dignity, compassion, and respect. Happy Pink Shirt Day.
The Honourable Member for Kings Hants.
Black History Month, I would like to acknowledge an African Nova Scotia hero from my very own riding in Kings Hants, Petty Officer William Hall. Born in Horton Bluff, Hall worked in the shipyards of Hantsport building wooden ships during the golden age of sail. He enlisted in the Royal Navy in 1852. From there, the young Nova Scotian traveled the world with the Royal Navy, seeing the shores of England, Ireland, China, India, and beyond. For his bravery during the siege of Lucknow, Hall became the first black person, first Nova Scotian, and third Canadian to receive the Victoria Cross, the British Empire's highest award for bravery. Wow. Now, William Hall's legacy is being commemorated as the namesake of the Royal Canadian Navy's 4th Arctic and Offshore Patrol ship being built at the Halifax shipyard. This is the first Royal Canadian Navy ship to be named after a black Canadian. I hope that all members of this House will join me in celebrating our Canadian hero.
Hear, hear.
Oral questions. Question orale. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister still doesn't seem to realize that Tech Frontier pulled its decision to invest billions of dollars into the Canadian economy because of a situation that he has created. He is directly responsible for the loss of 7,000 jobs. This application went through an independent analysis and was approved by the independent regulator, and all that was left was for his political approval. So why did this application sit on his desk since July?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The company in question decided to withdraw their application. They recognize that there is still a tremendous polarization in the debate in this country between Canadians who were very happy that the company withdrew its investment and others who were deeply disappointed that the company withdrew its proposal. The work we need to do is to demonstrate that the way we move forward is by creating jobs and by protecting the environment at the same time. That is something that the Conservative Party of Canada continues to refuse to accept. The only way forward with jobs is to protect the environment at the same time.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is trying to blame everybody else. First, he blamed global commodity prices, but that can't be true because there are investments pouring into Russia, Saudi Arabia, and the United States. He tried to blame the Alberta government. Well, his Liberal government gave equivalency to the Alberta emitters regime. Then he tried to blame Stephen Harper. I guess he forgets that he's been Prime Minister for almost 5 years now. He can't blame Scott Bryson, so will he finally take responsibility for his failure on this one?
Mr. Speaker, reconciling the environment and the economy requires responsible conversations and reflection by all Canadians. It's not good for our country to have this debate take place on the battleground between extremist views. What's good for Canada is to create common ground in which we recognize that the environment and the economy must go hand in hand. This decision was Tech's decision. As the CEO said, strong climate plans and collaboration across sectors and governments are needed. This should be a wake-up call for the party opposite that you can't have a jobs plan without having an environment plan.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, he has the same environmental plan that he has for his jobs plan. No action on either one. His environment, he has a balanced approach. He's failing on the environment and he's failing to get jobs built. So congratulations on that one. Now, when it comes to having a real plan, I want to read a quote to him that says, "We don't have a net zero plan. We have got to work on it. That's for sure." Do you know who said that?
Who said it?
The Liberal Minister of Natural Resources.
Oh, no.
So, will the Prime Minister admit that it is his lack of action and lack of a plan that are causing the hardship all over Western Canada?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, while the member opposite invents statistics, let's talk about a few things. Let's talk about the fact that we created 1 million jobs in this country over the past 5 years, and Statistics Canada just confirmed that 1 million Canadians were lifted out of poverty for a historic record. Mr. Speaker, we recognize there is much more to do, but at the same time as we've been growing the economy and helping Canadians, we've been phasing out single-use plastics. We've been phasing out coal plants. We've been moving forward on a price on pollution right across the country because we know that Canadians do expect us to do it all.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
That simply can't be true because people are pulling investments out of Canada because he does not have a plan for either the environment or the economy. And in terms of inventing things, that was a direct quote from his Minister of Natural Resources. So he might want to check with him on that. Mais, Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker, for 3 weeks, we have witnessed this Prime Minister's weak leadership regarding the rail blockades. They have sprung up all over the country and are blocking roads, ports, and tracks. They are harming workers who want to get to work. Does he realize that his weakness has let this situation get out of control? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we need to find a quick solution, a peaceful solution, but above all, a sustainable solution. We need to be able to continue as a country on the path of reconciliation, but we also need to be able to create prosperity and jobs throughout the country. Aggressive and simplistic solutions of the kind the Conservative Party has brought forward will help no one in this country. They won't help Indigenous communities, nor will they help workers who count on rail transportation. So we will continue along the right path together. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
to elevate radical protesters with no connections to Indigenous issues. That is shameful, Mr. Speaker. These are not people who are reflecting the will of the Wet'suwet'en First Nations. If they did, they would be standing in solidarity and fighting to get this project built, Mr. Speaker. These are radical groups like Extinction Rebellion, an organization that has been listed as a terrorist organization in the United Kingdom. So is the Prime Minister not embarrassed that he has shown less leadership and less of a backbone than radical protesters who just want to shut down our economy?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it really concerns me that I might have heard the Leader of the Official Opposition refer to Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs as radical protesters just because he disagreed with them, because that's exactly what he just said, and that is unacceptable,
Order. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I recommend the members opposite check the Blues, check Hansard for what the Leader of the Opposition just said, because he made that equivalency, and that is unacceptable. I may disagree with the leaders of the hereditary chiefs.
today, I had the honor, the privilege of meeting with a lot of school teachers from across the country, from one end to the other. Let me finish. We were talking about discipline in a classroom, and one of them said to me, you know, sometimes it works for me when it really gets out of hand, I turn off the lights. Now, I don't have a switch up here, so I'm hoping everyone will behave. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I salute all former school teachers, current and former, for the work that they do to improve the lives of all Canadians with their hard work. Thank you for meeting with them, sir.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, I would suggest that we peacefully look at all possible solutions. During the last Parliament, the Prime Minister made a commitment to UNDRIP. And in some cases, the government would like things to happen quickly. My question is this. Given this nation-to-nation relationship, is the Prime Minister willing to immediately consider adopting the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are working on renewing our relationship with Indigenous communities based on respect and mutual cooperation and partnership. We were very disappointed that the Conservatives prevented the adoption of our legislation during the previous Parliament. We have made significant progress on Indigenous languages, childhood and family services, and impact assessment processes. We are committed to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and we will be developing legislation. We see this as a minimum, not a maximum. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Well, I think that even Conservatives can understand the concept of reconciliation. It's a necessary one. And it was part of the values expressed by the Liberals during 2 election campaigns. Unfortunately, currently, no one seems to believe in it, especially not the Indigenous communities. So rather than repeat principles over and over again, could we immediately, right now, move ahead with the adoption of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples? You can count on the Bloc Québécois support for that. The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as we promised all Canadians, we will move ahead with legislation on the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and we're hopeful that the Conservatives won't block the adoption of that legislation, nor will it block reconciliation. Now, with respect to what the member raised, we have taken concrete steps on reconciliation, whether it has to do with boil water advisories in several communities that have been lifted, childhood service and family services, and a new tax relationship with many communities, as well as many other things, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During this crisis, there was a complete lack of leadership on the part of the Prime Minister. Hereditary chiefs had been asking for months for a meeting with the Prime Minister, but he refused. And we asked the same question here in the House. The Prime Minister said that it was not his responsibility to do that. This entire situation could have been avoided had the Prime Minister simply decided to meet with the hereditary chiefs. Now, in this House, will the Prime Minister commit to meet with the hereditary chiefs? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, it's very easy for opposition parties, whether it be the Conservatives or the NDP, to propose simplistic solutions. For weeks and for years, we have been working on complex issues. We've been looking for answers to complex situations, and that's why we have been committed to finding solutions with the hereditary chiefs to resolve issues such as childhood services. That's why British Columbia has been working on hereditary chiefs on ancestral titles, and we will continue to work on all these issues. And I'd like to underscore the fact that the Minister of Indigenous Services is willing to meet with these hereditary chiefs at any point in time. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
And the hereditary chiefs have asked the Prime Minister to meet with them. Yes, the Prime Minister should meet with those chiefs. It's pretty simple. Now, Indigenous leaders, business leaders have all asked that this Prime Minister meet with the hereditary chiefs. For some reason, the Prime Minister doesn't get it. Now, this whole crisis could have been avoided if over a month ago the Prime Minister just met with the hereditary chiefs when they asked for it. So I'm going to ask again, will the Prime Minister commit today in this House to meeting with the hereditary chiefs?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, a few days ago when I had the opportunity to talk with the leaders of the opposition about this situation, the member opposite brought up that exact question. I explained that there are many voices within the Wet'suwet'en community. Some hereditary chiefs, some elected chiefs, some leaders within the community as well, and the work that they need to do without outside interference to determine their path forward would be interfered with a Prime Minister sitting down with one group too quickly. I am, of course, open to engaging constructively, but in the right way, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, illegal blockades continue to hold this country hostage with no end in sight. By failing to lead, the Prime Minister has shown eco-radicals exactly how to delay, disrupt, and ultimately defeat major energy projects. Canadians are suffering. Over 1,500 people have lost their jobs, and hundreds of millions of dollars in damage has been done to this economy. Are the unelected, unaccountable radicals at the blockades in charge of this country, or is the Prime Minister?
I think we know the answer to that.
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Once again, Conservatives are pitting Canadians against one another with their divisive language and their dangerous rhetoric. They're ignoring the complexities of the situation and exploiting divisions within the Wet'suwet'en community for their own narrow political gain. This is a party that had 10 years to act but failed, and now they're doubling down on those failed approaches. Our work has always focused on finding peaceful and lasting resolution in a way that builds trust and respect amongst all parties involved. The injunctions must be respected, the blockades must come down peacefully and stay down.
Honourable Member for Abbotsford.
On Monday, protesters erected a rail blockade in my riding of Abbotsford. For weeks, anti-energy activists have been grinding the Canadian economy to a halt. They've even defied court orders and flouted the rule of law. But we know what their real agenda is, because at Monday's blockade, protesters erected a sign that said, "Shut down Canada." Why? Because this Prime Minister's feckless leadership has emboldened these radical activists. When will the Prime Minister finally stand up and uphold the rule of law?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are suffering, and the best way to stop that is to bring a solution that is quick, lasting, and peaceful. That's where all of our work has been focused. The Minister of Indigenous Services has been in close and regular contact with Indigenous leadership, as has the Minister of Indigenous Relations. We've engaged with party leaders and premiers, where the policing decisions are being made by police services independently, as is due course for the law, and injunctions must be obeyed. We've been clear that our hand is extended to meet at any time.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, it's day 21, and Canadians are fed up with the Prime Minister's nice words. Governing a country is a serious matter that requires making difficult decisions. Our economy has been taken hostage, and there's no plan to get us out of this crisis. Business owners all over the country are concerned. Losses are now in the billions of dollars, and many workers are out of work. Mr. Speaker, how long are we going to have to wait for this Prime Minister to show a minimum amount of responsibility and leadership? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, yes, Canadians are suffering, and that's why we need to find a quick, peaceful, and especially lasting solution. But unfortunately, the Conservatives continue to play petty politics by pitting Canadians against each other and by ignoring the complexity of the situation and taking advantage of decisions within the Wet'suwet'en community. That's not how we move forward as a country, Mr. Speaker. We are going to continue to do the difficult but necessary work in order to make sure that we have a prosperous and positive future for all Canadians. The Honourable Member for Montmagny, Lillet, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has displayed a lack of leadership in the matter of the rail blockades. Jean-Luc Laplante, a dairy producer in my riding, like many other producers, has been anxiously waiting for a soybean meal delivery, a source of protein that is critical for the survival of his herd. The situation is catastrophic. Trains aren't running, trucks take too long, it's very costly. What does the Prime Minister intend on doing to enforce the law and remove these blockades? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, once again, the Conservatives are proposing simplistic, aggressive solutions that don't work. They won't work for a lasting, peaceful solution. And that is why we are working to face these challenges, face them in a peaceful way. At the same time, we're making sure that essential commodities get through so that there aren't shortages in the country. We are working to help Canadians and to resolve these issues in a lasting and peaceful way. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Sturgeon River Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, the withdrawal of Teck Resources' Frontier Oil Sands mine was a blow to First Nations and workers in my province. It's no coincidence that Teck's decision came within days of the Liberal government's decision. Teck could read the writing on the wall. Even former Liberal leader Michael Ignatieff recognizes that ignoring energy-producing provinces undermines democracy. It's time for the Prime Minister to come clean. Will he admit that killing Frontier is part of his plan to end the oil sands?
Good question. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Speaker, Teck Frontier made a very clear statement that they support carbon pricing. They support a plan to fight climate change. They support climate action. The problem, Mr. Speaker, is the Conservative Party of Canada and its provincial affiliates continue to think that the way to move forward on jobs is to refuse to move forward on fighting climate change and protecting the environment. They are wrong, Mr. Speaker, and sticking in their wrongness is actually hurting Albertans and all Canadians, Mr. Speaker. We are all impatient for them to wake up.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, Teck Frontier is the latest victim of the PM's plans and policies to phase out the oil sands. The local Fort Mackay president says it's, quote, a black eye for Canada, and his words, what the hell is going on? But in 2018, the Bank of Canada already warned of no new energy investment after last year. Today, BMO warns chaos, instability, and uncertainty damages Canada as a place to do business, and a leading economist says Canada is, quote, hostile to oil and gas and to building major infrastructure. So why is the PM a puppet of anti-everything activists who want to shut down Canada?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, global investors like Larry Fink at BlackRock and other significant international pension funds and investment funds have indicated that the way forward is to make responsible investments in jurisdictions that have plans to fight climate change and that have a plan to continue to protect the environment. Alberta and the Conservative Party of Canada continue to politically resist any action on climate change, and that, unfortunately, is why we need to keep moving forward to help Albertan workers, to help Canadians from coast to coast to coast prepare for a better future.
Order. I want to remind the members of the loyal opposition that the noise is coming from one place, and it is very obvious, even to folks back home. So I just want to ask them to keep it down, please.
The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, we have a more disciplined approach. The priority of this government must be the removal of the blockades and get the economy back on track, not with firearms. Now, there have been fears expressed that there are arms on some blockades, which is a rather dramatic development of the situation. Does the Prime Minister still think that having asked for police intervention was the solution to this? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I respect the professionalism and abilities of our police services to do their work. It's not up to politicians to direct or instruct police anywhere. Our responsibility is to continue to work to find a peaceful and lasting solution to this very troubling situation, and that's exactly what we're doing, while ensuring in different ways that essential commodities continue to move on our tracks to help Canadians throughout the country. The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, politicians should have more responsibility than simply shoveling and offloading these responsibilities to other institutions. Now, it's possible to meet chiefs. I met some this morning. I'll be meeting others this afternoon, so it can be done. Will the Prime Minister consider requesting police services to withhold any action for 24 years? Number two, go to British Columbia, as the NDP leader also suggested, to meet the hereditary chiefs, and appoint a mediator. The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, for almost 2 weeks, our ministers have been meeting various Indigenous leaders, and I myself have had many conversations with Indigenous leaders to help find a peaceful solution to this situation, and we will continue to engage in that way. At the same time, we're going to respect the work of our professional police services, and politicians should never instruct the police to do anything whatsoever. We have confidence in their system, and we believe in the division of powers that are an essential part of our democracy.
Mr. Speaker, the government failed to protect Marilyn Levesque from a murderer who had a history of violence against women. The parole board is reluctantly undertaking an internal investigation, but no one trusts them to investigate themselves. Canada's correctional investigator is calling for an independent investigation into this case to be certain that all facts are known and to make sure that this never happens again. Will this Prime Minister commit today to opening an independent investigation so that Canadians know that the government won't cut corners on protecting women?
Right Honourable Prime Minister. And we extend our deepest condolences to the family and friends of Marilyn Levesque. Tragic loss for any family to have to face. The individuals have been arrested, and facing charges. We know people have difficult questions to ask, and that is why Correctional Services Canada and the Parole Board are launching a board of investigation into the circumstances that led to this tragic case. And I will emphasize that review includes 2 external vice chairs. The findings, of course, will be made public.
The honourable member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, yes, this is tragic, and that's why the family wants answers. That's why everyone wants answers. But yesterday, the correctional investigator said clearly that an internal investigation was problematic and that there had to be an independent investigation, an external one. Will the Prime Minister ask for an external investigation into the Parole Board and Correctional Services? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, obviously we extend our deepest condolences to the family of Marilyn Levesque. This was a tragic loss and would be for any family facing this kind of situation. The individual was arrested and is facing charges. We know that people are asking difficult questions, and that is why Correctional Services Canada and the Parole Board have launched an investigation to examine the circumstances leading to this tragedy. This includes 2 external vice chairs, and the findings obviously will be made public. The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, more than ever, Canadians are seeing that this government is being led, Canada is being led by a government that gives up. It's giving up its financial responsibility, it's giving up its responsibility to create jobs. Since the Liberals have been in power, the energy sector has been paying the price. 200,000 jobs lost in the energy sector. That's 200,000 families who have been affected by the bad decisions of this government. The Financial Post reported recently that $150 billion have been lost in investment, evaporated because of this government's inaction. Is the Prime Minister aware that his anti-energy policy is costing too much for Canadians? Mr. Speaker, over the past several years, we have seen Canadians create more than 1 million new jobs, and more than 1 million families have been lifted out of poverty. But we acknowledge that people in Alberta are facing difficult circumstances, and that's why we are investing in infrastructure. That's why we are helping them with innovation and find new solutions, and we will continue to work with them. Because in order to fight climate change, we need to have innovation. There needs to be leadership for Albertans and for all Canadians in order to find solutions for the future.
What we saw moments ago was disgusting. This Prime Minister specifically blamed, quote, Alberta. Not its government, not its leaders, but Alberta, for his government's refusal to approve the Tech Frontier mine, costing 7,000 jobs. Add that to the 200,000 people who have already lost their jobs. Add that to the $150 billion that has fled the Western economy as a result of his policies. History does indeed repeat itself, Mr. Speaker. Does he realize that when his father tried to cause a recession in Alberta, he caused one right across Canada?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I know the member opposite has respect for this House, for his long career in politics, and knows that he should not be misleading the House deliberately. It may have been an accident, so I will give him the opportunity to withdraw. He indicated that this government had refused the project. We had not. The Tech Frontier project was withdrawn by the company in question. I know he doesn't want to mislead this House deliberately. I give him an opportunity to correct the record and correct his statement.
The honourable member for Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, with no real plan to fight the climate crisis or create jobs, the Liberals are failing at both. A climate plan that leaves workers behind is no plan at all. And we can't attract businesses and jobs if this government isn't serious about climate change. We need investments in new infrastructure, renewable energy, public transit, and in helping people to retrofit their homes. There are lots of things that we can do to help fight the climate crisis. So why aren't the Liberals actually doing any of them?
The Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to have the opportunity to rise in this House to explain what we have been doing. We have put a price on pollution right across the country. We have protected historic amounts of our land and coastlines. We're moving forward with a plan to phase out plastics. We're going to move forward, as we promised in our election campaign, with a plan for home retrofits. We're moving forward in a broad range of things that demonstrate that we understand that fighting climate change and protecting the environment needs to go hand in hand with creating good jobs and supporting families. Mr. Speaker, that is what we are doing. That is what we will continue to do.
The honourable member for Courtney Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, despite all of their emotional words, this government has failed to take any meaningful action to fight the discrimination that Indigenous people face in Canada's legal system. Yesterday, I met with Colton Boushie's family. They're still waiting for answers, and they're waiting for action. Will the Prime Minister support First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people and accept their call to invite the UN Special Rapporteur on the rights of Indigenous people to Canada so she can investigate the systemic racism in our justice system?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I was honoured to sit down with family and friends of Colton Boushie last night to talk about exactly this and to remind them that we, too, continue to share their grief in the tragedy that their family underwent. We have committed to advancing reconciliation and addressing the systemic issues involving Indigenous peoples and within the criminal justice system. We abolished peremptory challenges for both the Crown and the defence, which gave each party the ability to veto a selected juror without having to give any reasons. This addresses long-standing concerns that racialized Canadians were being unfairly excluded in the jury selection process. We recognize there is more to do, and we will do it.
The honourable member for Surrey Newton.
Mr. Speaker, young Canadians face bullying daily, both in and out of schools. An increased amount of time is spent online, which means that people cannot escape harassment by simply walking away. This makes it even more important to stop the culture of bullying before it can spread. Could the Prime Minister update Canadians what our government is doing to combat bullying and harassment?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I want to thank my friend from Surrey Newton for his hard work and for his support for youth in his community. We're combating online hate, harassment, and other forms of discrimination to ensure that all Canadians, regardless of age, culture, gender, and sexual orientation, feel safe. We have an obligation to create diverse and welcoming communities so the young and the most vulnerable feel valued and included. So this Wednesday, I congratulate all colleagues who wore pink on Pink Shirt Day to continue to take a stand against bullying.
The member for Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, the Premier of Nunavut said he wouldn't support any new marine protected and conservation areas until the devolution deal can be reached. The Premier, the creation of any new conservation and protected areas in Nunavut would have significant impact on our ability to manage our lands and resources and carry out negotiations for decision-making leading to potentially very serious consequences. Will the Prime Minister listen to the Premier and the people of Nunavut and not close any further lands or any marine protected areas without a devolution agreement in place? Yes or no?
Well, the Prime Minister.
Speaker, allow me to take this opportunity to thank Premier Savikataaq Tak for his hard work on advancing the cause both of protection of our vulnerable ecosystems in the north, but also creating economic opportunity for people of Nunavut and indeed people across the Arctic. This is an extremely important issue on which I have worked closely with the Premier on, with all Northern Premiers on. We will continue to work together to ensure economic opportunity and development that makes sense for the people of the north, while at the same time we protect and preserve these fragile Arctic ecosystems for future generations. This is the kind of partnership that we will continue to work on together.
Well, member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister ordered the Defence Minister to get moving on replacing our North Warning System as part of NORAD modernization, but he forgot to put it in the budget. Now, a senior Canadian military officer recently warned the North Warning System cannot identify and track Russian long-range bombers prior to their missile launch or their overflights of the Arctic. We cannot defeat what we cannot detect. Canada is at risk, and we have to replace our antiquated North Warning System now. Mr. Speaker, to the Prime Minister, where's the money and where's the plan?
Honourable Prime Minister.
For 10 years, the Conservatives opposite underinvested in our defence, and that is why we were pleased to put forward over the past 5 years historic investments in upgrading defence capacity after 10 years of neglect by Conservatives who wrap themselves in the flag any chance they get, hide behind the troops any opportunity they could for photo ops, but wouldn't invest in our military. We will take no lessons from them on needing to invest in our military, because that's what we've been doing. That's what we will continue to do on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Central Okanagan, Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, money laundering allows organized crime to profit off despicable acts like human trafficking and selling fentanyl. The Attorney General from British Columbia has said, and I quote, "I've been incredibly disappointed with the response from the federal government," end quote. Shameful. Why, Mr. Speaker? Because the Liberals have done nothing. They promised $10 million, but zero has been spent. This is a crisis the Prime Minister has ignored for almost 5 years. What is he going to do today to ensure the country's financial system is secure? Amen.
Honourable Prime Minister.
For the past past years, we have invested close to $1 billion in strengthening our capacity to go after tax evasion and tax avoidance, and we have moved forward on working with the province of British Columbia on money laundering. We will continue to work, particularly Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, who is working closely with his counterparts to ensure that we are cracking down on money laundering and the illegal activities that flow from it. This is something that we take seriously and Canadians take seriously, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for West Nova.
Mr. Speaker, today in Truro, Nova Scotia, a memorial service was held for 23-year-old Chantal Lindsay. Last week, Chantal passed away due to complications with cystic fibrosis. Of course, our condolences go out to her family. Trikafta is a drug that treats CF and is available in the U.S. but is not available here in Canada. It could have saved Chantal's life. Chantal's father, Mark, said the government's chess game with the pharmaceutical industry cost Chantal's life. My question to the Prime Minister is, what is he going to do to make sure that Trikafta and other life-saving drugs are available to Canadians who need it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
We need to make sure that life-saving drugs are available and affordable to Canadians right across the country, which is why we've committed to moving forward on universal pharmacare, but also why we continue to work with provinces to ensure that more drugs are approved. We also recognize the high cost of rare disease strategy drugs, which is why we're moving forward with a way to support the provinces in those high-cost drugs. We know there is always much more to do. Our heart goes out to the family, and we'll continue to work to make sure that all Canadians have access to the life-saving medication they need.
The honourable member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, CP got an injunction against the rail blockade at Ganawake. So the peacekeepers are the ones who have the jurisdiction to apply the injunction, but they've refused to do so. The Prime Minister wants Quebec to deal with the matter, but the SQ doesn't want to get involved. That's clear. So what are we to do? The people of Ganawake have put up a barrier to protest something happening in BC. So the solution should come from BC. The government of Quebec cannot intervene in British Columbia. So the question is, will the Prime Minister finally fix the problem where it started, namely in BC? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. As the member knows well, for a week and a half, we've been working to solve this crisis by working with people in British Columbia, by working with people in Mohawk communities, by working with people across the country. We are negotiating to find a peaceful solution, but in the meantime, we know that these barriers must come down, that injunctions must be respected. The honourable member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, what happened since police descended on the barricade in Belleville? Well, new barricades have popped up elsewhere, in Kanesatake, Lennoxville, Gaspésie on the North Shore. And in Kanesatake, they've reinforced the barricade. We have to fix the problem where it started. And unfortunately, only the Prime Minister of Canada can do that. I always thought the Prime Minister lived in the land of unicorns, but today I realize he's living with his head in the sand. So, on behalf of Quebecers and on behalf of my constituents, when will he finally do something and fix the problem? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. On both sides of the chamber, we respect provincial jurisdiction. We respect the authority and the responsibility of British Columbia with regard to this challenge. We are very pleased to help, to support. I do not believe that the member opposite is asking the federal government to assume responsibilities which fall under provincial jurisdiction. That would be illogical on his part, but we're always going to be there to support, to help, and to work with our partners to find a peaceful solution and a sustainable one as well.
Mr. Speaker, there is a dire situation across the prairies. I met with farmers in Saskatchewan who are facing an urgent cash flow crisis. Actions by China blocking canola exports, and of course the Liberal carbon tax is putting a squeeze on their bottom line. But early snowfalls prevented the harvest from being completely taken off, and as a result, loans are due in a short period of time, and farmers don't have the cash flow to plant this season's crop. So is the Prime Minister willing to consider extending the advance payments program deadline, waive interest on its loans, and look for other types of solutions that will ensure that farmers have what they need to get a crop in the ground this spring?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
We recognize that the 2019 wet harvest has been a challenging year for farmers and producers. We recognize that there are many challenges that they are facing right now, and that is why we're continuing to work with provinces, with the prairie provinces in particular, to look at solutions that are going to help farmers that we rely on right across this country to put good, healthy food on our tables. We will ensure that they are supported, that their hard work is rewarded, and that they are reassured that there is a strong future in this country for our hard-working farm communities.
That's right.
The Honourable Member for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Do you even have a clue what farmers do, Mr. Speaker? Many farmers in Lambton, Kent, and Middlesex counties and across this country didn't get their crops harvested due to the late spring and a wet fall. Now they can't pay back their advance payments due next month because their main asset is still in the ground covered in snow. As much as they would like to, farmers can't control the weather, but they are majorly affected by it. Does the Prime Minister have a plan to help farmers get through the coming planting season?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we recognize the difficult moments that farmers have been living, particularly this past year that has been particularly wet and difficult. That is why we have a Minister of Agriculture who is engaged regularly and with positive engagement with her counterparts across the country. We will continue to look at all sorts of ways to support farmers in the important work they do for our country. We will be there for them as we have in the past.
Good. I just want to remind the honourable members, I'm sorry I missed that, but to channel their questions through the Speaker and not ask the Speaker what he believes. The honourable member for Foothills.
Mr. Speaker, last fall, farmers in my riding and across this country endured the harvest from hell. And then they had the carbon tax, the CN rail strike, and trade issues. Those producers who were able to get their crop off are now facing illegal blockades, preventing them from even selling those commodities, putting them in a serious cash crunch this spring. And now their advance payments are due, and they have no way of paying them back. They don't need platitudes. They need answers. Will the Prime Minister commit today to extend the deadline on those loan prepayments and waive the interest under the advance payment program?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
We know that Canada's agricultural and agri-food industry is a key driver of jobs, economic prosperity, and growth for the middle class. We know that severe weather, from drought to flooding and other risks beyond farmers' control, can have serious impacts on their businesses. Our government stands shoulder to shoulder with Canadian producers. We are monitoring the situation. We're working to ensure that they have the support they need.
The honourable member for Pierrefonds-Dollard. Mr. Speaker, last February 14th, our government announced an investment of $600,000 in Montrec, a company in Sherbrooke which manufactures industrial electric vehicles made of steel. We did so to support this company's growth and production capacity, and thanks to this investment, Montrec is now well positioned to expand abroad. Can the Prime Minister tell us more about this investment? The Right Honourable, the Prime Minister. Thank you to my colleague for Pierrefonds-Dollard for his question and for his hard work. We know that companies working in the sectors of aluminum and steel are important players, and they play an important role in our supply chains. They provide good jobs to thousands of Canadians. Our government is proud to have given this company the tools it needs to develop innovative technologies and processes. Canadian companies which innovate and are looking for new markets can count on our support.
Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister yet realize that Iran's foreign minister, to whom he smilingly offered a handshake, a buddy hug, and a bow, is not only the deceitful chief propagandist for Iran's democracy-crushing, terror-sponsoring regime, but is himself linked to recent gross human rights abuse in the deadly crackdown on civilian protests against the theocratic regime, not to mention his direct participation in the 1988 massacre of political rivals and dissidents. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister apologize to Canada's Persian community?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I made a promise to Canada's Iranian community to do everything we could to find answers to the questions they had about how their loved ones were taken from them and how they will be ensured to get compensation for it. And that is exactly what I expressed to the Iranian foreign minister. We need to be part of an international investigation that is credible and serious. We will continue to stand up for Canadians' rights, whether they be Iranian Canadians or otherwise. We will continue to defend them and stand with them through this difficult time, Mr. Speaker. We will not play petty politics the way the members opposite choose to.
The honourable member for Carlton Trail Eagle Creek.
Mr. Speaker, the Iranian regime has found a new way to persecute members of the Baha'i faith by requiring Iranians to declare their religion on their national ID cards, but only providing 4 options. No other religions are allowed, including Baha'i, the largest minority religion in Iran. Without one of these cards, Iranians cannot access government services, book a flight, or even purchase a car. Will the government call on the Iranian regime to end this and all other discriminations against the Baha'i faith?
That consistently stands up for human rights and the rights of minorities right across the country, right around the world, which is exactly what we will continue to do. I will highlight, however, that it has become more difficult for Canada to stand up for Iranian citizens who are facing persecution since that government closed the embassy in Tehran. We're going to continue to work to...
I want to remind the honourable members that the rules of the House... Order. I want to remind the honourable members that the rules of the House state that when someone is speaking, we sit and listen respectfully. And respectfully being the key word. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for highlighting that it is indeed Anti-Bullying Day, and that's why so many of us are wearing pink. But I will continue to say that we will look to stand up for human rights at home and around the world at every opportunity, including holding the Iranian regime and its violation of human rights to account.
The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
You know, Mr. Speaker, it's interesting that the Prime Minister would talk about wanting to reopen the embassy in Iran when he actually personally voted in favor of my motion not to do that a couple years ago. But in June, the House of Commons unanimously also passed a motion calling for an international independent investigation into allegation of genocide against Tamils in Sri Lanka. So I'd like to ask the Prime Minister what steps, if any, his government has taken to advocate for that investigation, and will Canada join the U.S. in applying sanctions to Sri Lankan Army Chief Shivendra Silva? Good question.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Our positions are consistent. We stand up for human rights everywhere around the world, whether it be in Sri Lanka or in Iran. Indeed, as asking about Iran, that is why Canada led a resolution at the United Nations in November 2019 calling on Iran to comply with its international human rights obligations. We deeply oppose Iran's support for terrorist organizations, its threats towards Israel, its ballistic missile program, and its support for the murderous Assad regime. We will continue to defend human rights and hold Iran to account for its actions, as well as we do all around the world, including in Sri Lanka.
Member for York Centre.
Mr. Speaker, we know that anti-personnel mines are senseless weapons that continue to claim too many innocent lives and seriously injure people who will forever bear their scars. In fact, it was a Canadian initiative that led to the establishment of the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention in 1997. could the Prime Minister update this House on the steps Canada is taking to achieve a world free of anti-personnel mines?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for York Centre for his advocacy on this file and for his tremendously hard work. We are firmly committed to advancing the objectives of the Ottawa Convention and achieving a world free of anti-personnel mines by 2025. Canada has invested $180 million over the past decade to achieve this goal. Since its signing 20 years ago, 53 million mines have been destroyed and 30 countries have been declared free of mines. This is exactly the kind of leadership that Canada is demonstrating to the world.
Honourable Member for Esquimalt Saanich Sooke.
Well over a year ago, the Prime Minister committed in this House to work with us to reach the UN targets that would lead to the eradication of HIV. Instead, new infections are up 11%, 19% in Saskatchewan. Nothing has been done to make HIV testing and treatment more available. Not for racialized and marginalized Canadians, not for young gay men, and especially not in Indigenous communities where the rate of new infections continues to climb. Why has the Prime Minister failed to get the things done that we need to eradicate HIV in this country?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we recognize the impact of HIV/AIDS on Canadians from coast to coast to coast and indeed around the world, which is one of the reasons we hosted the Global Fund replenishment a number of years ago to ensure $13 billion towards the eradication of HIV, tuberculosis, and malaria in Africa. But we recognize there is much to do in Canada as well, and we have. Investing in supports for communities, investing in grassroots organizations, investing in health approaches that are showing reduction in the rates of HIV, even though we recognize it continues to be a challenge, and we will work together and continue to, Mr. Speaker.
And that's all the questions for today. C'est tout pour aujourd'hui.
That's all for today.
Come to the points of order in a few moments, if it's okay. We'll just go through a couple of housekeeping. I would like to draw the attention of members, the presence in the gallery of the Honourable Dustin Duncan, Minister of the Environment and Minister responsible for Sask Power and the province of Saskatchewan. Today, Parliament marks the 100th anniversary of the first sitting in Centre Block on February 26, 1920, following the Great Fire which ravaged most of the original Centre Block. During the rebuild, the House of Commons sat in the Victoria Memorial Museum, now the Canadian Museum of Nature. We too sit in a temporary chamber as Centre Block goes under rehabilitation. It is a reminder that history is always in the making and that democracy will always have a home on Parliament Hill, regardless of the roof under which we debate. À titre de président, c'est un privilège.
As Speaker, it is a privilege for me to serve members and to ensure that debates and other business of the House and Parliament go smoothly. Even though this place is temporary for us, that is not the case for the events which take place in it. I know that my colleagues will join me in thanking the clerks and House administration, whose work will benefit future generations who will be able to look back on the work and debates which the clerks and administration are preserving with care. Several copies of Hansard, dating back to February 26, 1920, will be placed in MPs' lobbies so that members can take a look at the deliberations which took place on that day. Thank you very much.
We have a point of order. The Honourable Member for Calgary, Signal Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday of this week, in response to an answer from the Minister of Environment, I used a term which is quite popular in the oil patch in Alberta, and I believe was about 100% correct of the Minister's answer, but on reflection realized that it was unparliamentary language, Mr. Speaker. But you know, some 200,000 Albertans are unemployed because of the bad policies of this.
I'll cut the apology off there while the member is ahead, and I'll accept the apology. Thank you. The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Island had a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, and of course I don't need to remind the Speaker that I know that a prop is not acceptable in Parliament, but there is an exception when the piece of paper you're holding up has to do with the point you're making. I just wanted to remind members, they may have seen this book. They may have seen this book, the standing order.
I believe the rule states that